All right, so think about this for a second. How much of your life is like tucked away in the digital world? All your banking info and your medical records, photos, messages. It's almost like a second version of you exists online. But what happens when that second you gets compromised? Well, today we're diving into some research about ShareRing and Google Cloud to see how they're tackling this increasingly complex world of digital identity and data security.
Certainly timely, especially when you consider that cybercrime is costing Australia somewhere between 29 and $30 billion every year.
Wow.
Yeah, think about what that represents. Disrupted businesses, stolen identities, all this compromised personal information. It paints a pretty unsettling picture.
Yeah, that's not just some abstract number. That's people's livelihoods at stake. And it's not just like credit card theft anymore, is it?
No, exactly. We're talking about identity theft that can take years to unravel, medical records being held hostage, even disruptions to essential services like power grids and hospitals. The potential damage is enormous, and it affects everyone. And on top of that, the regulatory landscape is evolving rapidly. Global regulations like GDPR are setting a new standard. And Australia is stepping up its game with these significantly increased penalties for companies that fail to protect data.
Yeah, the article mentioned a potential jump from $2.22 million to $50 million or more in fines for Australian businesses. That's a massive wake-up call. So how does ShareRing fit into all of this? They seem to be proposing a pretty radical solution with this idea of a digital me.
Right. The idea is to give you back control of your data. Imagine a digital you that's stored securely on your own device, not in some company's server. You decide what you share, with whom, and for how long. And they're using blockchain technology to make this happen.
Okay, so blockchain. It's a bit of a buzzword these days, but can you break it down for me? What makes it so secure?
Think of it like a digital ledger that's distributed across this massive network of computers. Every transaction is recorded and linked to the previous one, creating this unbreakable chain. So to alter one record, you'd have to alter every single record in the chain across the entire network, making it virtually impossible.
So it's like having a million security cameras watching your data all at once. But how do I actually prove who I am without revealing all my personal information?
That's where zero-knowledge proof comes in. It sounds complex, but it's basically a way of proving you have the right information without actually revealing the information itself. Imagine proving you're over 18 without showing your ID. You can mathematically demonstrate you meet the requirement without disclosing your birth date or address.
That's really clever. It seems like ShareRing has the individual security in mind, but they're partnering with Google Cloud, and I can't help but think, isn't that just another huge company that wants my data?
That's a valid concern. And that's why Google Cloud's approach to data segregation is key here. They use a technique called siloing, which basically means your data is stored separately from other users' data, reducing the risk of large-scale breaches. Think of it as your own private, locked vault within Google Cloud.
So even if someone managed to break into Google's system, they wouldn't be able to access my data because it's locked away in its own little compartment.
Exactly. And to add another layer of security, Google Cloud uses these robust encryption methods. It's like putting your data in a safe and putting that safe inside another safe and then locking that entire room in a vault.
They really thought this through, didn't they?
It's a pretty comprehensive approach to data security. And ShareRing founder Tim Boss, he really emphasizes how Google Cloud's commitment to data segregation aligns with ShareRing's vision of self-sovereign identity.
It sounds like a powerful partnership, especially in a world where consumers are becoming increasingly concerned about data privacy.
Absolutely. It's not just about meeting compliance regulations, it's about building trust. Companies that prioritize data privacy are earning a real competitive advantage in today's market. Consumers are paying attention.
So technology is a huge part of the solution. But how can we be sure ShareRing walks the walk when it comes to security?
That's where independent certifications and standards come in. ShareRing has achieved certifications like ISO27001 and the UK's DIATF. These certifications mean they've gone through rigorous audits and assessments to prove they're handling data responsibly. It's like having a trusted third party verify their security measures.
So it sounds like they're ticking all the boxes in terms of security and compliance. But what about the user experience? I mean, what good is all this technology if it's a pain to actually use?
You're absolutely right. User experience is paramount. And that's another area where ShareRing shines. Their ShareRing app is designed to be incredibly user-friendly. It's like having a digital wallet where you store all your important identity documents. But with the level of security and control, the traditional methods just can't match. It's like having a digital wallet where you store all your important identity documents. But with like this crazy level of security and control that you just don't get with traditional methods.
So instead of rummaging through my wallet for my physical ID, I could just use my phone to verify my identity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine walking into a bar and being able to prove you're a legal drinking age
Hmm.
just by scanning a QR code with your phone. No more fumbling with your driver's license
Yeah.
or worrying about losing it. And because it uses that zero knowledge proof thing we were talking about, you're only revealing the information that's absolutely necessary. In this case, just the fact that you're over 18. You don't have to give them your birth date or your address.
Okay, that sounds super convenient. And it definitely addresses some privacy concerns I have. But what about the businesses on the other side of this? I know they face a lot of pressure to comply with all these data privacy regulations. How does sharing help them manage all of that?
Well, sharing offers a solution for businesses too. It's called Sharing Link. Basically, it's a system that integrates seamlessly with the Sharing Me app, allowing businesses to verify user information without having to actually store that data themselves.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, businesses can meet their compliance obligations without taking on all the risk and responsibility of managing sensitive personal data. That's a pretty big deal, especially with those massive fines we were talking about.
Exactly. It's about creating a system where businesses can really focus on their core operations without having to become data security experts. And then on the flip side, consumers can feel confident that their information is only being shared with the parties they choose on their terms. It's a win-win situation.
We've painted a pretty optimistic picture so far, but I think it's important to acknowledge that no technology is perfect, right? So, what are some potential challenges or concerns we need to think about as this technology continues to evolve?
Well, one crucial aspect is going to be accessibility. As digital identity becomes more prevalent, we need to make sure that everyone has equal access to this technology. Not everyone has a smartphone or the technical skills to navigate these systems.
You're right. We can't allow digital identity to become a barrier to essential services
Right.
or create this new form of digital divide. It has to be inclusive and accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. And then, of course,
Mm.
there's the ongoing challenge of security. While blockchain technology is incredibly secure, it's not foolproof. As with any system, there's always the potential for vulnerabilities to be exploited. So we need to remain vigilant about identifying and addressing those risks as they arise.
And what about privacy? Even if we can guarantee the security of our data, who gets to decide how that data is used and by whom? I mean, could this lead to new forms of surveillance or data tracking?
These are all important questions.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are no easy answers. We're navigating uncharted territory here. But I think the key is to approach this technology with a healthy balance of optimism and caution. The potential benefits are enormous. But we also need to be mindful of the potential risks and engage in these open and honest conversations about the ethical implications.
So, as we move toward this future of decentralized digital identity, it's not just about the technology itself, it's about establishing clear guidelines, ensuring equitable access, and protecting individual privacy.
Precisely. It's about shaping a digital future that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about cyber threats, the need for these secure and user-friendly identity solutions, the innovative approach of sharing in Google Cloud, and some of the challenges and ethical considerations we need to address as this technology evolves.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, and we've only just scratched the surface, but hopefully you have a better understanding of the key players, the technology, and the stakes involved.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this isn't just some abstract tech story. This is about reclaiming control over our digital identities.
It's about shaping a digital world where our data is treated with respect and where our privacy is protected.
And that's something worth fighting for. But I think we've left our listeners with a pretty big question hanging, haven't we? Who gets to set the rules in this new world?
Yeah, it feels like we've just been handing over the keys to our digital lives for so long, without much say in how those keys are used. So with this shift towards decentralized identity, are we finally getting back in the driver's seat?
That's the big question, isn't it? Will this be the moment we move from data exploitation to data empowerment? It's a power shift that could completely redefine our relationship with businesses and governments.
So paint me a picture. What does a world actually look like, where individuals truly control their digital identities? All right, so imagine this. You walk into a store, pick up some age-restricted items, and you just scan a QR code with your phone to verify you're of age. No need to dig out your ID or worry about a stranger handling your personal information.
That's the convenience factor. I can definitely get behind that. But what about more serious matters? Could this technology change how we access things like financial services or healthcare?
Absolutely. Think about applying for a loan. Instead of mountains of paperwork and endless background checks, you could grant secure access to the specific financial data needed to assess your eligibility. Or imagine managing your healthcare records. You could grant temporary access to your doctor without handing over your entire medical history.
It's like giving people the ability to open specific doors to their digital lives without handing over the entire key ring. But it's not just about convenience and security, is it? This feels like it has the potential to level the playing field in a lot of ways.
You're hitting on a crucial point there. Um, right now, access to so many services and opportunities hinges on your ability to provide the right documents. But not everyone has equal access to those documents. This can be a huge barrier for marginalized communities, refugees, or anyone who's had their documentation lost or stolen.
So, a universally recognized digital identity could be a real game changer for people who've been systematically excluded or disenfranchised.
Exactly. It's about ensuring everyone has the tools they need to
Yeah.
participate fully in society and the economy.
And that's where things get really interesting. If digital identity becomes the norm, what does that mean for something like voting? Could this be the key to secure and accessible online voting?
Now you're talking about revolutionizing democracy. But I have to ask, with all this talk about potential, are there any downsides we need to be wary of?
Of course, there are always two sides to every coin. We need to think critically about the potential for misuse, right? What if governments or corporations try to use this technology for surveillance or control? What safeguards do we need to put in place to prevent that?
And even if we can address those concerns, who gets to decide what information is included in our digital identities in the first place? What about cultural differences or societal norms? There's a lot to unpack here.
There absolutely is. And that's why these conversations are so crucial. We need diverse voices at the table to make sure that this technology is developed ethically and responsibly. It's not just about the technical nuts and bolts, it's about shaping a future that benefits everyone.
Well said.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think we've gone way beyond just exploring ShareRing and Google Cloud. We've stumbled onto a much bigger conversation about the future of identity itself.
And that future is being written right now.
Yeah.
It's a future where we have the potential to create a more secure, equitable, and empowering digital world. But it's going to take all of us working together to get it right.
So, to our listeners, I'll leave you with this. Don't just sit on the sidelines. Get informed, get involved, and help shape this future. Because the choices we make today will determine the world we live in tomorrow.